Good morning.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, very good. Before I start, I want to say a couple of things. A lot of things in this world, people don't know that they are kind people. And the reason I'm very happy to see it is my foster sister and my foster brother's wife is here, and her name is Shirley Eugent Craig and Beverly Eugent and Rodney Eugent. Matter of fact, I used to babysit for Rodney and Warren Eugent. It's so important to say that there are so many kind people. Shirley's father was a gentleman by the name of Morris Eugent. He was the most kind soul on earth. And they adopted me. He was a refugee. I was at an orphanage in Milwaukee on 21st Invalid. I came there, and right away, my English was limited. And he spoke to me in Yiddish, naturally, because he was also from Lithuania, and so am I. We're Litvaks. And here I met a gorgeous lady coming down, a girl. There was Shirley Eugent. And then I also, later on, met Beverly, which is Aaron's wife. Aaron was my foster brother, gentleman, great. And actually Abe Eugent, which was the father of Rodney. No, just one. The Eugents were just, there's a Hebrew word that says tzaddik, which means holy, great, wonderful, and those are the people. They are just, I can't, actually through them, I became alive because I was very mixed up young guy when I did come. Naturally, all the stuff I went through. So anyway, thank you for listening. I kind of feel like the prized lion in a zoo, but you know.
Before there was a Holocaust, before there was a war,
Yes.
what was your life as a child like?
Well, it's very hard to go back that far, but we were in Vilno. Vilno was a town of 80,000 Jews. It's called Jerusalem, Jerusalem of Lithuania. And naturally, as a young guy, I went to Cheder. And in Cheder, you learn two things. You have to carry the rabbi's things that they do during the night, into a toilet downstairs. That's your number one job. And then you learn a little bit, And then whatever little you learn, at the end of the week, the rabbi has to show he's worthwhile. So he takes you home. And he asks you, well, do you know Ashrei Beishecha? There's a prayer. And he holds you by the ear. That's why my ears are so long. So he hangs on to your ear until your memory comes in. So you learn all that not by want, but by fear. And that's how I learned some of the Hebrew that I know, and I still pray to God every day, even though I ask him, why did he pick us up? It says there's a thing in our Seder, it says, Atobo Hartono Mikol Ha'amim, that means you have selected us from all the people. I wish you would select other people for pain. But anyway, that's how it was.
You say you pray still every day. And of all the survivors I've interviewed, they've talked about their belief in God. I even had the opportunity to interview Elie Wiesel years ago, and he told me he was still angry at God after all these years. Why do you still pray every day?
Well, actually, you can never be real angry at God because you wonder, with one hand, he punishes you, you wonder why, but in the other hand, he helps you. How I came to America was I'm kind of jumping around.
Well, I cheated because I jumped around.
Like my wife, Lori, told me, stay on course, it's not easy. So,
well, I asked you the question about God. We're going to go back to your childhood in a minute.
Go ahead.
But you pray every day.
Oh, yeah, I do. I thank God for whoever I meet, which is my wife, 30 years ago. That's why I still survive. She's a dietitian. She keeps me away from gluten and all the other good stuff. But the idea is that if you don't believe, you're very lonely. You have no holidays, for atheists.
Were you religious as a child? Your dad go to shul on Saturday with you?
Oh, yeah, very religious. My grandfather, I would walk miles and miles he had a store, and I would walk there to the store. Naturally, I'd get beaten up along the way. There were anti-Semites. And lo and behold, I would come there and he'd go to the synagogue. At the end of every Saturday, he'd bring along a poor guy and he would eat with us, and that was kind of his way to do tzedakah, which is, nice.
When did you realize the war was going to affect your life? What was the first sign that something was changing?
The first terrific change was when the Germans came in. First, the Russians occupied Vilna, and then the Germans went to war with Russia, and then they came into our town, and all of a sudden, we were getting like 1 to 3 hours to pick up whatever you have on your back, and they take you into a neighborhood, which was the worst neighborhood in the world, put 30, 40 people in one room, and it's called the ghetto, the real ghetto. And that was my introduction to the world of fear.
How old were you?
Oh, between 7 and 8, something like that. I was actually one of the youngest, thank God, to survive the Holocaust.
So you go into the ghetto and it's your mom and your dad and you. Did you have other family there with you?
No, just myself, my dad, my mother, and also, no, my grandparents already were gone, and all I was left was with an uncle and a cousin still there in the ghetto. And the ghetto was, should I talk about it or no?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
okay, fine, no problem. Normally
He's
when I talk
trainable.
about it, I can't sleep the next night, but that's all right.
Do you mind losing a night's sleep for
Yeah,
us?
you wonder how the heck you made it, when I talk about it, I look like a third person. It's someone else that was happening to, not to you, because it's inhuman, what happened. Anyway.
No, don't anyway. Explain that.
Oh,
So
okay.
because we sit here, we marvel at the fact you survived it. And you're wondering how you survived it?
Did I?
You wonder about how you survived all
Oh,
of
do
this?
I wonder? Yes. Sorry for the thing, the echo of the
Yeah.
microphone kind of bakakt. Sorry, use a Yiddish word. And that's unfair to the people. Sound like I'm an idiot, Anyway,
Is this better?
yeah, that's a little
Okay.
better.
So
Yeah.
we wonder how you survived it.
Okay, great.
And
Now
Now, you like that?
I
okay.
don't have to
And-
lip read. I don't have to read lips anymore. No, it ain't,
But
it ain't easy.
all these years later,
Yes.
I walk away from every one of these interviews and I think to myself, that was an amazing story, and I have to pinch myself to realize it's not a fictional story, that what you told me you lived through. Do you think back to certain days, certain moments that are stronger in your memory?
Well, the first moment in my life was when I was in the ghetto, and all of a sudden I found out that every week they give you a sojourner, which in Italian for a document that you are able to hang around, otherwise they take you out from the ghetto, and they call it czystka. Czystka in Polish means cleaning. They would clean you out. They take you to a place called Ponar. Ponar was a forest where they dig holes and they shoot the people. You line up and they just lay you right in there. They shoot you right from the ghetto. And I was very fortunate to meet all that little by little. At that time, I only spoke Yiddish and Polish, but I didn't learn German till later on, which I'm very thankful for picking it up. I'll tell you my later life, how it happened. So the first time when I kind of heard about it, I couldn't believe it's happening. I was too young to understand. Matter of fact is when I was liberated, a lot of guys who were a lot older than I went to the insane asylum. They could not believe that they are free. They could not believe that, they were so incarcerated, so impugned by what was happening to them. And luckily I was a small guy, a young guy, so I kind of put it behind me,
When you-
Even now, I very seldom think about what's happening and how it happened and how it does, because it kind of arrests you. You kind of become a slave to to the past. And they say, you don't want to live in the past, you want to live in the future.
So how long were you in the ghetto before you were moved to a camp?
Oh, in the ghetto, we were about a year and a half. And actually, before that, we had a Polish gentleman, his name was Kazimierz. He was a farmer. He actually took me into his home because the ghetto was kind of rumbling. They were taking people in and out, so my parents had me come up to him, and he, with his horse and buggy, took me under straw to his farm, and he risks his life because if they would have found me, they would have shot me first and him second. So, and I was with him for about 5-6 months till it steadied out in the ghetto, and then he brought me back from his farm back into the factory where my father worked, and then with my father I went back into the ghetto. And then later on, when the ghetto was to a point, they sent me out, my uncle and my cousin, they sent us to a place in Estonia because the Germans always had to surround us. We actually were their prize because if they weren't with us, the German, they would go to the Russian front. And there they found out at the Russian front, it's not as easy as poking around Jews who don't have any weapons. There they would get shot. So the idea was to hang around with us. We were their industry, so to speak.
So this is, again, something I didn't hear from the other interviews I've done. So you're saying that they actually kept you alive as opposed to get rid of all of the Jews because it kept them alive.
They punished us and all that, but they still needed us because if we weren't around, they'd be right on the Russian front. So obviously we were the industry, not what their bread and butter. So anyway, my uncle and my cousin were there, and then all of a sudden we heard that there is another camp, and the other camp had a guy that was very similar to my father. And lo and behold, there was him. So we made a transfer. One gentleman from the place I was with went there, and I was back with my father. And that's how I got together with my father. And we were together in that particular camp.
Which camp was this?
Yeah, the camp, I don't remember, in Estonia. It was near Tallinn, which is the capital of Estonia. And then from Estonia, they took us by boat to Stutthof. Stutthof is a German camp which was near a place called Peenemünde. Peenemünde was a place where they were making the V rockets that are shooting to London. And some of us employed, by Peenemünde, I didn't do much. So I was there with my father, and my father actually spoke English because, lo and behold, before in life, he went to South Africa for a while, and he was there. Why he came back, I don't know. There's a lot of Jewish people there in Cape Town, Johannesburg. There was a lot of Lithuanian Jews that were there, and he was one of them. Then he came back, and actually we wound up in the ghetto and everything. And I tell a lot of people, don't let possessions possess you, because say, oh God, I cannot leave it. The mattress, the commode and all that, how am I going to leave that? The heck with my life, that's more important. So the idea is you got to take care of yourself, forget the possessions. You're only here for a short time and you're renting space, that's all you are.
You told me, I don't know if it was in Stutthof, that you ended up working for the commandant of the camp. Was that the camp you were?
That comes in, okay. Glad you reminded me.
I remember.
Okay, we were in Stutthof. Well, Stutthof was a lot of big camp, and it was kind of tough. And my job was cleaning the toilets. Unfortunately, I don't do that now, even though I acquired that skill years ago. So there I was, and as I'm there, a German comes in, and he sees me there, and with his boot, he hits me, and I fall right into, all the good stuff. And then as I get up, he wipes me off, and he says, tomorrow you come and see me in my place. See you in your place? My God, I can't get out of the thing. I'll get shot. How can I do that? He says, trust me. No, nobody will shoot you. Well, anyway, that guy happened to be the camp commander. And I became his guy. I was polishing his shoes. I was scrubbing things. And then when he was getting bombed, I could feel he got in a real mean mood and all that, because he had a son just about my age. And I guess at one time he found out that they were bombed, that he didn't know what happened. So anyway, while I'm in the camp, I was very happy because I was getting a lot of bread. People always would confide in me to kind of help him out and all that, because one time he gave me a loaf of bread and I took it with me as I'm going through the gate. The German guard saw the bread on me. He picked me up, put me outside, and he beat the living daylights of me with a rubber hose. Well, next day I come into the commander's home. He says, was machst du? What do you make? What happened to you? And I said, oh, I fell off the bed. He took out his luger, put it to my head, and says, sag mi die Wahrheit, tell me the truth. And I told him, well, I'll get shot by this guy or the next guy. So I told him, I said, yeah, I got beat up because I had the bread. He says, come with me. I come with me. He says, point out which one beat you up. Oh, God. Well, might as well hang me right now. So I did, pointed out. He took the rifle out of that guy, and he just beat the living bejesus out of him. He says, this is my Yudin. This is my Jew. He says, you don't dare touch him. And by God, next time I walked through the gate, I was like a plague. They just weren't going near me, no matter I could carry gold. So anyway, while I'm in camp, we had a rabbi in there, and the rabbi got real sick. Well, sick bay meant you go there and they have a 2x4 and they hit you on the head and they say, how do you feel? Well, obviously you feel real good. So you get out of there. So the rabbi tells me I cannot go on sick bay. So I went to my commander and I said, naturally I spoke German pretty fluent by then, thank God. And I said, we had a rabbi, and he needs an arzt. Arzt means a doctor in German. He needs a real one, because my guy knew what happens on sick bay. I didn't have to tell him. Well, he says, you terrible Jews, you always have trouble. You're just full of problems. No, okay. He says, bring him in. Bring the rabbi in. The commander takes him, picks up the doctor, and he tells the doctor to take care of this rabbi. Okay, no problem. Goes obey. Anyway, years ago, after liberation, everything, I have a friend in Skokie, Illinois. His name was Ira. He was a builder. So Ira and I are a delicatessen. Standing there, there's a guy with a beard standing there. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him. And then he says, are you Label? Label is my Jewish name. Ari is my Hebrew name. And I said, Label, yes. Oh, Gewalt. He says, this is the guy that rescued me. This is the guy that in camp gave me a doctor and he hugged me and he did. And I said, oh my God, geez, I couldn't believe it. At least I did something good.
So all these years later, you saved a rabbi's life.
Yeah.
And then you met him.
Yes. And that made me feel good. You know, like you do something real good and you're not getting paid for it, you know. It's something, you do it out of your, in this case, I had no choice. I figure, what am I going to lose, you know? But to us, when I was a little guy, a rabbi made something, you know, like, you know, it's some religious person. It's a kind of a guy that communicates with God on a higher level than you do, and that's why, you know, we kind of have respect for it, which now we don't have anymore. That's unfortunate, you know.
And all the time you went through this, were you sick? We were pretty healthy throughout the...
No, thank God I never got sick. My mind was at a point, I wish I had that mind now. And no, I had no problems, because while I was in Stutthof, naturally, I ate well, I brought stuff for other people. I walked around and everybody kind of would talk to me and they say, oh, I need that, I have a problem. I said, well, I can only help so many, not everyone, because I would love to, but I'm afraid, if I keep it up a lot, he's gonna kick my rear end and I'll lose the goose that lays the golden egg, So I was kind of a bit selfish.
Were there ever plans people want to talk to you about how to escape?
Well, some did, but the problem was the gates were electrified. You go up there, pick it up, and you broil, And there was no easy way getting out of there. And
were you able to do anything special for your father in this position?
Well, I was in camp. Well, I naturally would bring bread to him, and he'd work on a commando, There's another thing. The commandos were, each commando was about like 20 people, okay? And each commando had a guy, a capo, they call it, which is, the head guy. And he would say, there's 20 guys that are working now. However, when we go back, only 19 go through the gate. One I'll have to kill. He had a brick in his hand. And can you imagine the mind of the people, the 20 people during the day, in the evening, to find out who's going to be the one? The tension was just awful. Luckily, I did not experience that because I was with the commander. So I kind of was one of the chosen ones, and that helped me a lot. And then later on, I found out after they liquidated the camp, Stutthof, how bad things can get. We've been to another camp called Allach. There was like a death camp. They fed you very little, and they were waiting for you to die, and that was it.
Just so you were in Stutthof, you were in Dachau, you were in Allach?
Dachau first. Dachau was a kind of a miserable camp, and Allach was a camp where you go and you expire. But from there on, they took us in railroad cars, and they were going to go out, and as we come to Murnau, which is a town farther out in Germany, in Bavaria, and as they were on a hill, and as the cars would come in, as the freight cars would come in, we'd go out and they machine gun us. Well, luckily at that time, the Allies were coming real close, and General Patton sent a message to the commander of the train that if any one of us gets shot, he'll be the first one to get shot. And what he should do is he should go with the train back and forth until the Allies arrived there, because they were about 2-3 days. The paratroopers came in, but the real army could not come in yet. So that's what he was doing. He'd go back and forth, and finally the SS was asking him, he says, there's a Befehl, which is an order from Berlin, finding out what's wrong. And he said, well, I need parts. I cannot get any parts from the train. He took it apart the last night. So that way the train would be able to go back and forth. No, finally, the army arrived. God, guys I've never met, African Americans about 10 feet tall, guys, I couldn't believe this. And they carried with them chocolate, things, soap, and some of our guys took the soap, put it in a pot, and tried to make soup out of it. Naturally, they got sick, but it was better than nothing. And then they kind of deloused us, and all of a sudden, here we are, out of the thing like birds, free, we're walking. And then my dad and I walked to a place called Iffeldorf. It was a German town, and luckily we went into the town, into the home of the Bürgermeister, which is the mayor. And he took us in, he deloused us again, gave us some clothes. We looked like clowns in a circus, Naturally, my father could speak English, so he would talk to the guys, and I don't know, something happened to him. He got sick, the ambulance came in, and they took him away from me, and I tried to find where he is, how he is, and he disappeared in my life, and later I found out that he died, and I didn't know about it. And there, all I was is...
And you're about 15 at this point?
About 14.
14.
Something like that. And there I was, and all of a sudden, from the Bürgermeister, from the house, they took us in trucks to a displaced person camp, which was Feldafing near Munich. And there they put us together, people of the Holocaust survivors. We would be there, and the UNRWA, which United Nations Relief Agency, would come in and give you packages and help you and things like that. And actually, during that time, I heard there was called an Aliyah Aleph. Aliyah Aleph means the first going, it's in Hebrew, the first going to Israel. At that time, I was in Israel, it was Palestine. And then you'd go to Italy, and the harbor was Bari. The Italians were the only one that would allow us to emigrate to Palestine, so to speak. But the English were standing there with their warships, and they pick us up, and they throw us in another concentration camp on Cyprus. And I said, oh my God, no. I've been in one, two, I'm not going to another one. So I turned around, and I went back to Italy, and I lived in Milan for 7 months. And naturally, I learned Italian, a lot of. And then in Milan, there's an opera called La Scala. It's one of the greatest operas in the world. And at that time, they were playing Tosca with elephants on the stage, and I sat there eating sandwiches because I could go anywhere. I would say, io ebreo campi concentramento. This is, I'm Jewish from the concentration camp. My God, wow, the Italian couldn't believe that. I say, Italo-Americano. No, I'm just Ebreo. So naturally, we worked, kind of tried to steal food, and all sorts of different things to survive.
Where did you go? You said you were in Italy for 7 months in Milan. Where did you go after that?
I stayed in a place called Scola Cadorna in Italy, kind of like a half camp, There were some other Jewish guys would be, And also we were helped a little bit by some organizations, that would provide us with a little food, not too much. And then little by little, my money and everything ran out, and I decided there's only one way to go. We got to go back to Germany. At least I didn't want to go back to Cyprus. So we went back to the Brenner by the Brenner Mountains that you had to go through late at night, and we wanted to get arrested by the Carabinieri, the Italian. As soon as they arrested, they was deport us to Austria. And then from Austria, we could kind of walk back to Germany. So I decided we went back to Germany. We came in to a place called Landsberg. In Landsberg, there were the Brecha. The Brecha were the young Israelis who take you from Germany into Israel. They were the toughest guys in the world. I mean, you didn't want to cross those guys. So we came in there, and they naturally didn't like us because we are not going to Israel, we're going back to Germany. And they beat the daylights out of us, took us out of town, and somehow somebody picked us up, and we went somehow back to Germany. I went back to the place I was, and little by little I heard that there was a way where Mrs. Roosevelt would take orphans, some of them, and bring them to the United States. But you had to be a certain age, an orphan, all that. Lo and behold, I went there and I qualified, and then we went to the Kaserne, which is a place you stay there. It's actually an armory. And then in the armory, and from there on, we went to the camp, to another one. We went to Brenner Harbor, and from Brenner, they took us on a boat, a Marina Flesher, which was a troop ship, and we came to New York in an orphanage in New York, and that's how I came to the United States.
I've got questions from people,
Okay,
so I'm going to
no
stop your
problem.
story. But
I'll
thank you
shut
for,
up and listen.
No, you're doing great. Do you know what happened to your mom?
No, my mother, was with some other women in Latvia, and I think they annihilate them there. Because I registered with the Red Cross while I was in Italy. I had a Red Cross card so I can travel all over. And then I tore it up because I was afraid if they find it on me, I can't go back to Germany. So I checked with the Red Cross and everywhere, and there was no sign, nothing. That was it. And naturally, being by yourself, you're always attached to your parents, but then something happens to you where you lose your feelings, you lose your thing. All you care is your self-survival, which is very egotistical, but that's how you survive.
Question about how it is. Most Holocaust survivors are hesitant to tell their stories, but you're doing it. You're doing it here wonderfully. How hard is this for you?
Well, it is not my favorite thing, but the thing is here, what we need to do is to tell people that we don't ever want to happen the same thing again to us. Now, thank God, we have a country, we have people that come and rescue us, like on Entebbe, guys go out, they give their life. Matter of fact, is Premier Netanyahu's brother, Josie Netanyahu, gave his life, actually, by rescuing the Jewish people from Entebbe. So we've got somebody to represent us. And that's, thank God, that we have a country, and now we were somebody, in other words, we're not helpless. We have a representative, so to speak.
Another part of their question was, did you go through counseling? Have you gotten help to keep your sanity in the aftermath of being through all this?
Did I go to any psychiatrist?
Yeah, or to doctor. I mean, how did you stay so healthy?
No, I number one, going back to the Eugens, they were kind of my clearinghouse. Shirley's brother, Aaron, may God bless his soul, phenomenal guy. He used to schlep me all over with him to his friends, and I would speak a little Yiddish. He says, Leon, please, you gotta speak English. He says, Yiddish, you can talk to my father, but that's it. I don't understand any Yiddish, you speak English. And needless to say, I went to McKinley Grade School, and before I can go to high school. I went to high school and graduated in 2 years, because previously to it, I went to a German school. I wanted to improve my German in Munich. It's called Elisabethenfachschule. I was the only Jewish guy there, and they looked at me like a guy from Mars and all that, but it helped me speaking and all that. So actually being by the Eugens for 5 or 7 years, they were just wonderful people. They were just the kindest, wonderful people. I just can't tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
The commander, question about what your thoughts are about how a man in power like that could treat people so horribly, but treated you well. What are your thoughts about why? Do you think, you mentioned he had a son your age. Do you think that basically there was a human being there in addition to being this monster, this common?
Right. Well, the thing is, you cannot bear hate inside, because if you're full of hate, you have no room for anything else. And there were so many kind people that kind of allowed you to become a human being.
So we have kids here, and adults too, who hear the word ghetto. We have an image in our head, but we don't. What does that mean, a ghetto? Is it a building? Is it a neighborhood? It's not a camp, right? What's a ghetto?
To me, what it means is like being in hell. That there's a place where there's the worst thing in the world. First of all, I was too young to understand how bad it is. But as you get older and you think about it, your experience that you went through, it shouldn't happen to anyone. It's just something that is, your system, your mind, everything is so poisoned. You think like there's no tomorrow. And yet, you cannot lose your hope, so to speak. There's a saying in German, Gott verlassen, gar nicht verlassen. Mut verlassen, alles verlassen. Meaning if you lose money, nothing. But if you lose your hope, you lost everything.
So I want to know what you think of the anti-Semitism we see today, the skinhead marches, and if you think that is any similarity to what you saw before the war, if you can remember that, or just how you think about the fact that anti-Semitism continues to this day here in this country. What are your thoughts about that?
I'll tell you, unfortunately, anti-Semitism is not something new. It goes back years again. In the times of Shakespeare, Jews were called Shylock. Jews were not allowed to get a job, but they were allowed to change money. Naturally, if you don't give anybody money, they're going to hate you. Well, what happens at the beginning? Jewish people are successful, so to speak. Not all of us, a lot of us. And because we are a minority, we stand out. And if you come to this country, you are a refugee. You cannot speak any word of English. You are in an orphanage. You get a job, then you get a better job. Then you go up, you get a little education. Little by little, you start a business. You're 19 years old, become a business, you employ 12 people, you're in business 50 years, you become somewhat successful. And this is the country that they say of opportunity. This is the greatest country in the world where if you grasp opportunity, you can become successful. But if you're lazy, this is the worst place on earth because you see what other people have and you have nothing. Well, naturally, you become a little jealous. And anti-Semitism, I think, breeds itself from hate. In other words, if everyone would be ambitious and everyone would have a lot of things and everyone would ride around in a Cadillac and everybody would have a big home and all that, you have a lot to lose, you wouldn't think about anti-Semitism. But if you're in a neighborhood, when you live in a basement and the other guy is above you, well, you know, it's anti-Semitism purely is classes of hate. But the thing is, if you pick yourself up by your boots and you say, I am no longer going to be poor. I am no longer going to be dependent on anybody. I'm going to help people out. I'm going to donate things. I'm going to make a better world. Well, this is how we fight anti-Semitism.
Lee, what a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. Shalom. Shalom and Tadarabah. Thank you very, very much.